Right, hello. Welcome to another one of my videos. Um, this one is all about Cambridge International's English language A level, and it's paper two. I'm going to use the specimen paper today, so if you wanted to go and find that through CIE's site or through Papa Cambridge, whatever you use, whoever you find your papers, it will be useful for you. This lesson is inspired by something that I've already done with my classes, but I kind of wanted to build on it and spend a bit of time focusing on how you can actually get the marks. Because paper two, although people generally feel more confident on it, what I've found with my pupils at least is this is their less strong paper. Paper one, I feel we've got cracked. If you go away and learn your stuff and know how to write the answer, you can just do it. But the examiner puts little traps and all sorts of tricky stuff in the paper two exam. So I'm going to talk you through how to be aware of those and how to make sure that they don't get you. So one of the first things you can do in your revision, or you should have done in your revision, because we're only a couple of days away from the exam in 2025 anyway, is know what types of writing are going to come up. And there are, if I'm going off the top of my head, I think 5 of them. I'm testing my memory now. We've got personal writing, review and comment, persuade and advertise, argue and discuss, and narrate and describe. So you definitely know something like that is going to come up. Let's have a look at the exam paper, actually. This is the specimen paper, like I say. So we get a question 1, a 1A where you get a shorter writing task, no more than 400 words, a 1B where you have to do a commentary. I'd recommend, if you wanted to know how to do a commentary, look back at some of my analysis videos. You can adapt that structure. I'm not going to do that in today's video. And then the section B, which is the extended writing, and they give you a full range here of really interesting and actually quite fun titles. Some of my class would argue against that. They didn't like the question about reviewing bridges, but you know what? I loved it. Anyway, I'm getting waylaid. It's a 2-hour paper. You can divide it however you want, within reason, of course. You could do an hour on section A and an hour on section B. Or if you are a particularly fast writer, perhaps you could do 600 to 900 words in 45 minutes. You can then spend that extra time going back and analysing your work in question 1. But it's completely up to you. It depends how you want to prioritise your marks. If you know you're a stronger analyser than you are a writer, perhaps you can get some extra marks in that 1B question. Anyway, so we're having a look at different types of writing. One of the first things we're going to do is have a look at personal writing. I've got a little list here of the types of personal writing that we can expect. So obviously diary, logbook, an autobiography, and a journal. They're all going to be first-person pieces of writing. There's going to be bits of emotion, there's going to be opinion, perhaps anecdotes, which are short stories to prove a point or show something to your reader. But the key difference between these is the varying levels of formality. Depending on what the prompts is, your diary can be formal or informal. You know, if you're writing a diary as, I don't know, some serious academic, I can't think of when they'd ask you to write that, but I'm just hypothesizing. But I would say a diary tends to be a little more informal than something like a logbook, which is going to be something you're going to do for an expedition or something for work. An autobiography, depending on the tone you want to create, and you can justify that in your commentary, is going to be a lot more personal. And the word is introspective. When you're looking inwards and you're trying to analyze yourself. And again, a journal suggests some kind of informality, I think. Well, it depends what the journal is for, your context, audience, and your purpose. So those are really fun types of writing. If you wanted some to look at, I'd recommend looking at Captain Scott's diary, or even, who's the name of that woman who sailed around the world? She's Ellen somebody. You'll be able to find her on Google, but she writes wonderfully. think she came up on the IGCSE once. Anyway, the second type is to review and comment. These are really popular on CIE. They've done a few reviews in the last couple of years. So if it were to come up, lots of people do really well at them because you can go positive or negative. And often I found people are really good at being negative. You can have a lot of fun. You can be creative. I've done some examples of this on some of my other videos if you wanted to have a look. Problem is they're often on things that are very, very specific. So I think CIE know that people love doing reviews and they know they do really well at them, but they'll throw something weird at you. So for example, that one I mentioned earlier about the review of a program about bridges, which unless you don't know anything about bridges is going to be, unless you know something about bridges, is going to be quite tricky. Reports, these are going to be quite formal, usually something for a work setting. So you'd have to adapt your writing to that style. It will give you explicit instructions on what you're writing your report on and who you're writing it to. So it's an interesting one for audience there. And that's going to affect how you write it, obviously. Writing to comment, I've read some really good examples of this. Is the closest thing I can compare it to is a bit like an essay, but it's also really good journalism. So if you go away and read papers like The Times, perhaps going on to some of the larger articles from the BBC, where they're not taking up one side, they're or attempting not to take one side anyway. They're looking at really complex issues. So, you look at some of the bigger topics that we have in the world right now, which perhaps this lesson isn't or this video anyway, isn't the place to do that. Yeah. So it can be impartial, it can be opinionated and biased. It completely depends on the context. Who's the audience, right? Mostly formal, some informality for a review, obviously. We've got headings and titles, logical approach to issues, might not be chronological, and it's got to be portraying the expertise of the writer, making some good or bad comparisons as well. Next one, persuade and advertise. Let's just check how I'm doing for time. I'm on 7 minutes, okay. Ooh, there I am. Next one, persuade and advertise. So we've already had some of these turn up in the latest paper one. Spoiler alert, sorry everyone. So you had a speech. Hopefully you remember to address your audience. That's how it wants to start. You're addressing your audience. You're saying the who, what, where, when, and why. Why am I here? Who am I talking to? Well, I've got to address you, and a lot like the essay titles as well. Is you got an introduction where you want something impactful. It's like, think back to the best speeches, the best assemblies you've had in school. The person doesn't stand up at the front and go, "Hello, I am talking to you today because I am going to inform you about why we should all be taking English language A-level." I mean, you've already lost me. It needs something powerful. One-word sentence, rhetorical question, long, complex sentence. You can use that structure. Why am I here? You may be asking. Fair question. It's a bit more engaging. Anyway, I've gone on a complete tangent. Second, campaign literature. So this is what CIE really likes a text about the environment. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like this were to come up, where you have to persuade an audience to donate money or something like that. Same with adverts. So your campaign literature is going to be really passionate. It's going to be really informed. An advert is perhaps a bit more emotional and heavy-handed with the persuasive techniques. There's going to be lots of things like emotive language. I've talked a bit about soft versus hard sell. So appealing to your emotions versus using those facts and figures. We can compare people who talk about the environment. Greta Thunberg is a wonderful speech maker. She is so passionate. However, lots of people do not like her approach because it's too strong. It's too, heavy with the facts, people may argue. And I'm sure she'd argue right back that that's what we need to be. So if we're doing this in a 1A, 1B scenario, if you've gone for a really hard sell on your persuade and advertise text, you could justify it. That's the nice point. Because the examiner is going to look at both your 1A and 1B together. We're going to have lots of direct address, so using you. These acronyms here, if you're not sure, go away and Google them just for the sake of time. I've got a list here of what they stand for. So things like alliteration, anecdotes, which I've already mentioned, rhetorical questions, repetition. I've got commands or imperatives, using intensifiers, a slogan. These are all things that you can include in your writing, which are going to make it linguistically interesting. That's how you're going to get your marks. You can't just write something. It has to be good. It's got to be juicy. Give the examiner something to get their teeth into. Argue and discuss all of the techniques from above, but obviously there's varying degrees of formality. So your letter, if you're writing a letter to your friend, it can be really informal. It can also be incredibly formal. So yours sincerely versus lots of love, signing off your letter. Essays are a wonderful prompt if they come up. Anyone who does an essay-based subject, I really recommend you have a go at this essay question, depending on what the prompt is and if it piques your interest. You need, obviously, an introduction at the start where you're going to answer the question perhaps in one sentence, provoke thoughts, suggest what you're going to talk about in the rest of your essay, and you need a conclusion at the end which doesn't mention anything new, but summarizes and ends on a powerful note, something thoughtful. The actual essay has got to progress through a series of ideas. Like I say, if you're doing subjects like history, geography, even economics, or English literature, another wonderful subject, you should be really good at these essay-based questions. Articles, again, have been really interesting. Obviously, you need titles, and again, that kind of first paragraph, which is going to summarize what you're going to talk about in the whole of your article, the who, what, where, when, and why. Speeches, again, a lot like the ones above. And emails, I mean, like a letter, I found CIE quite like when you write a subject line in as well. You can even write an email address in, just as long as it looks as email-y as possible. You have to really ham it up. The only thing I wouldn't do is like drawing things like images. I've seen a couple of people do that. Don't waste your time. No, I wouldn't bother. Finally, these types of prompts people find really exciting, really engaging. They are hard to do well. They are also ones that I really enjoy reading when they do go well. When I am doing my marking and they don't go well, it's hard. So you have to remember the examiner's going to be feeling the exact same as I will. So your descriptive writing, again, has to be linguistically very interesting. So lots of techniques, your figurative language, your semantic field, your pathetic fallacy. So using the weather to create this kind of atmosphere. If I go over to my prompt over here, there's one about a storm where you have to focus on sound, light, and movement. Gosh, what really specific questions. And then things like zooming in, so you're kind of imagining you are this camera moving across a scene. I find it easiest to write in past tense. You don't want to be doing things like floating tenses, which is very easy to do in a descriptive writing. So if you keep to the past, that just makes your life easier. Phonological techniques like alliteration and assonance are also going to make it really pop. Narrative writing, again, you need to develop characters. I recommend no more than like 1, 2, or 3. That was a big bracket, wasn't it? But you don't want to get ridiculous with your characters. Don't want to be introducing a whole family. This isn't a saga. I realise I'm coming to the end of my time, and I hope this has been useful. I've got some other things here that you can read for a narrative. Go away and read a book. That's my advice. And have a wonderful time in that paper 2 exam. If you're having fun, the examiner's having fun too. I hope you found this useful. Bye bye.